We break it down, 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 down. She break it down, 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 down. She got a message for the people, a brilliant mind and a clean soul. She's standing up to the evil and making sure that we all grow strong enough to break these chains we in that keep us in this painful condition. She give us truth and division. That's why we listen. She break it down, 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 down.
Yes. Welcome back. You are listening to Lurie Daniel Favors on Sirius XM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. Today is, again, the 13th of February, as I've already shared and announced and had conversation with Urban View about. Hi, YouTube, welcome. But because it's the 13th of February, it's also Black Love Day. And I cannot think of any other better way of acknowledging the importance of Black Love Day than actually stating it. So happy Black Love Day to everybody. Black Love Day, I think, is a phenomenal institution. Shout out to Mama Ayo, who came up with it and who has been spreading it. And I know some of y'all put it on the 15th, but no, Mama Ayo said it's the 13th. So we're doing it on the 13th. But I just want to let you all know how beautiful and amazing and dynamic and wonderful it is to be Black. I love this space. I love our culture, our people, and I love you and all of you who are similarly feeling inspired on this Black Love Day. It's Friday the 13th, so we also got some good news because I don't believe in Friday the 13th being a bad thing. I know that's them people's culture. That's not my culture. So we're going to talk a little bit about the good news, and then we're going to talk about Jeremy Carl because we have to. But I do a lot more of this in the podcast because I'm not going to get a chance to get to everything today, but just know that it's good news, and then Jeremy Carl, who is a white nationalist who gave me an opportunity once again to say, I told you so. But first things first, we are this weekend finally at long last, and my guests who are coming on in just a bit are going to be here to talk with us about more of this in after I get off of this live. But this weekend, I'm opening up the doors to my online community known as Lurie's Sancofa Connections. I am super excited about this. Thank you. Thank you for the applause. Thank you. And we're doing this because my show will be in its 5th year. We are going to celebrate our 5th year anniversary. We'll technically celebrate it on Monday, which is the 16th, even though this show started on February the 15th in 2021. And it started here on Urban View, and y'all who have been rocking with me from the time I began this show, love you. Those of you who are my day ones, at least as it pertains to Sirius XM, you know you've been with me since 2017 when I was providing legal analysis for Karen Hunter's show. And in honor of all of that work and out of a recognition that, quite frankly, a few things. Number one, the community of folks that I have the capacity to be in touch with has exploded. I mean, Urban View, y'all already know it's millions of people in Urban View that we get a chance to talk to every day. And even before I had this show, it was millions of people in Urban View that I was talking to weekly on Karen Hunter's show. And in addition to that, we now have all of you, tens of thousands of folks on YouTube. We've got the hundreds of thousands of folks in the podcast community. And I'm saying that because we are quickly approximating 1 million downloads. And you've got a little bit of room, but we getting there. And the community has expanded in so many ways. And as much as I love that, and it has been amazing, I'm also very clear that I don't own any of these spaces. I don't own any of these airwaves. And even if I did, the conversations that we have here is largely based on me talking to you, sharing my information and my insight with all of you, you all agreeing or disagreeing, and then taking that information and hopefully sharing it and spreading it across the country with your family, your friends, and whatnot. But I don't own these spaces. And in addition to that, I've noticed a real increase in algorithmic bias and in the bots. And I'm realizing that even if I did own these spaces, because there's so many outsiders, define that as you will, in these spaces as well, it makes it kind of difficult for us to build community. And when you add to the fact that, again, much of what we're talking about is me talking to you and not necessarily us in conversation and dialogue, unless, of course, you're calling into the show. But even then, it's a limited engagement. And so I really want a space where community building is what can also be happening. And so we are launching this weekend Sancofa Connections, Lurie Sancofa Connections to be specific. And it's for people who are part of a subset of my community, of my listenership. And if you do not meet these requirements, then that's fine. There are plenty of other spaces that we will be able to connect. But Sancofa Connections is my virtual community that I am holding space for people of African descent. And it's designed to bring together listeners from across all my platforms into one shared community. And it's where the conversations that I start on air and in the public square keep going, even when the mic turns off. And it's where those conversations deepen, where they expand expand, and most importantly, where they become communal. And it is a space to reflect, to question, to laugh. It is not one of them spaces that's like, we got all the answers. Baby, I got way more questions than I have answers. That's not it at all. But it's this idea that even as we disagree with care, as I like to say, we can support each other through the complexities of being Black in this moment. And it's not just about conversation. It's also about having a support group. It's about having an education space. It's about having the opportunity to cultivate an analysis based on the content that I share that is going to allow us to really deepen ourselves and our ability to do the work of building community. We are going to be using in that online space a framework called self-collective root responsibility. That framework is going to be throughout the entire framework, or should I say throughout the entire online community space. And all of the conversations will be sort of rooted in that framework, which is a framework that my comrades and I came up with after decades of doing community organizing work coming out of the hellishness that was the Penn State racism things that were happening. They ended up killing a Black man. The white nationalist was white nationalism. Baby, I've been doing this for decades. And so out of that work came this concept known as self-collective root responsibility. And this is a space where we will begin not just having conversations that are intentionally within the framework, but really begin training ourselves to think about our condition through that veil, through understanding how an issue impacts ourselves individually. How does this issue impact the broader collective? Because for a lot of us, we often stay in the, well, when I experienced racism, it happened to me, without then extrapolating what is the impact of that issue on the broader community. Because if we only stay in a self-centered approach, we're not thinking about building solutions. After we examine how it explores the collective, we also want to ask ourselves, what are the root causes of this issue? Because if you don't know the root causes of the issue, you'll come up with affirmative action as a solution. And baby, that ain't no solution unless you're talking about surface level issues. And then ultimately, we will ask ourselves, what is our responsibility to imagine and build solutions? And this is a framework that has been producing African-centered Saturday schools. It's been producing cooperatives. I know some of y'all don't believe in cooperatives, but I do, because I build them and help build them and support and sustain them. And I see the impact that they have on Black people's lives. And it will also be a space for those of you who know me from Sancofa circles, will be able to get an opportunity to have Sancofa discussion circles as well. And again, I explain all of this in much more detail in my podcast, which will be out later on today. But if you are interested in that, and if this appeals to you and you are a part of the demographic that it is applicable for, then I encourage you to go to my website, LurieDanielFavors.com. That's LurieDanielFavors.com. Get on the mailing list. You will this weekend receive a notification that the doors are officially open, and then you can apply to participate. It's kind of like a Patreon, but it ain't about you just talking to me. It's about building out community. Everyone in the community will be able to have their own profile page. You'll be able to determine what interests you have, what gift, skills, and talents you have, and then be connected with other people who are thinking similarly. For those of you who are thinking more geographically, that is an opportunity as well for people to continue connecting and building in real life off of the conversations and the learning that we do in that space. So I'm hugely excited about it. My next guests, Brian Favors and Asada Richards, are going to be on talking with us about why community is so important. So I just wanted to share that with you to help set the stage and to let all of you know that this is happening, and I'm really, really excited about it. Having said all of that, let's get into the news of the day. And this is just a quick little tidbit, because we're not doing a hard and heavy analysis on all the things. We've been doing hard and heavy all week, and quite frankly, my heart is hard and heavy at this point. And I want to have a slightly different conversation. Y'all believe, I believe, if you've been listening to me for any length of time, you know that I believe in saying I told you so. I do. I just do, because I'm a little petty. We know this. We accept this about myself, and that's okay. And so yesterday, there was a hearing in Congress where a white man by the name of Jeremy Carl gave me a real reason to say, I told you so. Now, Jeremy Carl is a part of an organization, an institution that it's called the Claremont Institute. It's kind of like the Heritage Foundation, and they really are a feeding group to a pipeline, if you will, for white nationalists to go from wherever they are in their miserable lives into government, into leadership positions. And he was being grilled at this hearing because he has been appointed to serve as one of Marco Rubio's minions, and there were some questions that some of the members of Congress or the Senate rather had for Jeremy Carl, because Jeremy Carl is a proponent of whiteness culture. He believes that whiteness culture is under attack. He believes that white people are suffering and struggling. And so this came up during the course of the conversation, and Jeremy Carl struggled a little bit. Jeremy Carl had some challenges. He wasn't able to really speak to these issues in ways that show any level of intelligence, which is another reason why we get to all say, I told you so. We're going to just play this clip. This is one clip, and I want you all to take a listen, and then we'll unpack it briefly on the other side before we welcome in our guests. Let's hear what this man had to say.
Tell me how you define white identity and what you think is being erased about white identity.
Certain types of Anglo derived culture that comes from our history.
Like what?
Let me think about this. Senator, I would say if you were to look at the book by one of your former Senate colleagues, Born Fighting, about the sort of Scotch-Irish military culture and certain, pride that went with that, that would be one example. Obviously, you could have sub-elements of that culture. You could have Italians, you could have Irish, and those are in many ways more
But you're worried about white culture. You're not worried about, you're now retreating to ethnic identity. You don't speak about ethnic identity. You speak about white identity. So tell me the values that stitch together white identity and that make it different than black identity.
I would say that the white church is very different than the black church in terms of its tone and style on average. Foodways could often be different.
And those
music could be different.
And those are being erased.
Music could be different. Well, if you look at the Super Bowl halftime show, which was not in English this year.
So our ability to access white churches or white food or white music is being erased?
I am concerned with the majority common American culture that we had for some time that through particularly mass immigration, I think has become much more balkanized, and I think that weakens us. And again, I'm not running away from that comment. I'm not apologizing for it.
Well, I'm way over my time. I think you're struggling to answer this question, right? Because underlying your beliefs is a sentiment that white culture is just simply better.
And it ain't, though. It ain't, though. This is one of the reasons why white nationalists struggle the way that they do, because there is a difference. And the senator picked up on it. Shout out to Senator Murphy. The senator picked up on it. There is a difference between race and ethnicity, or race and nationality. You can be a black person who is a race, as according to race, you are black, but you might be an American, which is nationality. And if you're an American, your ethnicity might be Southern. Your ethnicity might be you from Brooklyn. And I know we don't often think about ethnicity in that way as it pertains to America, but black Brooklynites and black Southerners, we all black and we got that in common. But we also know that there are some distinctions there. There are some different ways that we move through the world that are very much connected, but they're different branches of this. They're different limbs off of the branch of the American portion of the Pan-African diaspora. You might be black and you might have a nationality that is American, but you might have ethnic roots in Nigeria. And the only reason Nigeria exists is because white people created lines on a map that said, we're going to call this Nigeria. But within Nigeria, there are ethnicities, the Yoruba, the Hausa, the Twi, the Igbo. And so there is a difference between your nationality, which is your nation of citizenship or recognition, your ethnicity, which is the respective group within that nation that you might be a part of, and your race. Race is something that white people just created a couple hundred years ago. And the only reason they created the notion of being white was to determine who could and could not be enslaved. Whiteness culture is about domination. And the reason he struggles in that moment, this is supposed to be a smart one. He's supposed to be one of the bright ones. The reason he's struggling in that moment, and you heard what he said, when asked directly, what is whiteness culture? He defaults to Scottish-Irish military ruling. That's not white. That's Scottish-Irish. That's nationality. That's ethnicity. That ain't white. Scottish-Irish people abandoned being Scottish-Irish when they came to the United States so that they could be white, but they left that Scottish-Irishness. When you're talking about biscuits and beans for breakfast, that's something that the English people do. That's not American. That's not white. That's something the British white people do. And so this idea that he is stumbling to try to explain what it is that he feels is under attack about whiteness, because that's what they all say. We're under attack. They're coming for our culture. They're coming for our white women. They're coming for us. They're coming for the whites. They're coming for the whites. Baby, we don't want your food. Your food sucks. You engaged in murderous, treasonous, anti-human crusades to get salt and spices that you still don't know how to use. We don't want to be at your church. Your churches are boring and ain't no Jesus, ain't no spirit, it's holy or otherwise except demonic in them spaces. We don't want that. We don't want your music. Trust. Trust, honey. We don't want your music. You're not under attack for being Scottish-Irish. You're not under attack, period. But you're certainly not under attack for being Scottish-Irish or for being French or for being Dutch or whatever. You're under what you perceive to be attack because you're a white narcissist. you're a white narcissist. Your white narcissism is under attack. And just as a reminder, because the amazing Ashley the Baroness introduced us all to this concept, we've been using phrases like white supremacy. They don't really work so well. And white narcissism, again, the 5 characteristics of narcissism as defined by the Cleveland Clinic are the following: a grandiose sense of self-importance with exaggerated achievements, expecting to be recognized as superior, and often fantasizing about limitless success, power, or brilliance. If that ain't white people who participate in whiteness culture, I don't know what is. This idea that you are superior based on only your desire to state you are superior and you got guns. It is mind-blowing to me that you have convinced. It is the ultimate mindfuck. It truly, truly is. But the second characteristic, excessive need for admiration, a constant craving for attention and validation from others, needing to be the center of attention. That's why y'all get so upset when anybody wants to study something else, when we want to look at ourselves instead of looking at you. Well, why do we have to have Black history? I need a White History Month. I need to have myself centered. You're always at the center. And you don't hold the center together well. A sense of entitlement is the third characteristic. Unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment and automatic compliance with their expectations, often reacting with anger when not met. That's just slave patrols. Y'all just demand that people adhere to you and defer to you, and we got to get off the sidewalk when you're walking by. We can't laugh too loud because it makes you uncomfortable. We can't wear our hair naturally because it makes your wives realize that the men want to be with the Black women. So y'all pass laws like you did in Louisiana to ban Black women from wearing their hair out because you demand to be the center of attention. This is your culture, Jeremy Carl. Your lack of empathy, the inability or unwillingness to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, viewing their emotions as weakness. The only way you can engage in crusades, the only way you can engage in genociding the indigenous, the only way you can engage in trafficking millions of African children through a sex trafficking and labor trafficking ring known as the transatlantic slave trade is if you are completely devoid of any empathy. The fifth characteristic, exploitative behavior, taking advantage of people to achieve their own ends, forming relationships based on what others can do for them rather than genuine constant connection. Jeremy Carl, you don't need to go to Scottish-Irish military culture to defend whiteness. You can't go to Scottish-Irish military culture to define whiteness, because whiteness is simply the abandonment of who you ethnically were, who you were nationally, and the abandonment of those identities so that you could take on the identity of the colonizer. That's whiteness culture. And the only reason you feel like whiteness culture is under attack is because the colonized are in an act of utter and full wholesale resistance. And shout out once again to the sister. I'm gonna hold up the book we read today in the moment of gratitude from this sister's book, All Black Everything, Poems by Chanel Murray, a poem on resistance. And so it is so important that we realize that as they crumble, as they scatter and try to figure out how to move forward, how to do all the things, how to get it together, that we remember who we really are. And that requires us to build community. It requires us to abandon their values, their ways of thinking, their ways of knowing, their ways of being, and fully turn to each other and build what is in our best interest. We're going to hold it there, YouTube. Again, I do way more of this discussion in the podcast, which will be out later on today. The podcast is called Lurie Breaks It Down. Shout out to one of you who suggested in the comments that I please put a link to the podcast in the description for the videos. I will do that. You know, we got a lot of things happening here. But once again, to all of you on YouTube land, we appreciate you all so much. Please check your email. If you're good on my listserv, and then check your email. And then hopefully, depending on, you know, how we do, we'll see you in Sancofa.